Hey, y'all. Welcome to Down Ballot Banter, the podcast that puts a spotlight on local elections and what local government actually means for you. I'm Monèt, Noelle, Marshall.
And I am Quay, Weston.
Yeah, you are.
Local elections are extremely important, and we're on a mission to learn together and to break down local politics in a way that makes sense to us and doesn't require us to be experts.
Because we are not.
Hello.
So whether you're a seasoned voter or this is your first opportunity, we've got the insights and information to keep you informed and engaged.
Because when it comes to building new worlds, all of our inputs matter.
Yes. So if you're ready to learn with us, let's go. Hey, friend.
What's up, Monèt?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm really glad to be here with you today.
Me too.
I know who you are, but you want to tell the people who you are?
Yeah. So I'm Quay Weston from Antigua, North Carolina.
Hey.
Yeah. Glad to be here in Durham, living the dream, you know? Yeah. What about you? What you want to share?
I am Monèt Noelle Marshall, originally from Long Island, the Strong Island, New York. But please don't try to pull my North Carolina card. I really promise I am at least 7th generation North Carolinian on my matrilineal line. So we've been here a long time. And I am so excited that you said yes to doing this podcast with me. You are someone that I trust. You ask really good questions. You're honest. And I feel like that's really what we need. And you're curious. And I feel like that's really what we need to have really impactful conversations about really difficult topics.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right. Can I ask you a little bit?
Sure,
of something
please
to follow
do.
that up? I know, again, we know each other well. I've spent much time together, but for those who don't know, what's your origin story?
Ooh, I'm a theater kid with a theater mama. I'm really an artist through and through. But I also really believe in the power of culture and what happens when we practice things together and the conversations that we can have, the ways that we can shift our communities in these ways just by showing up and listening. And I feel like the way I know how to do that is through conversation and arts and culture. So also I started the student government at Powell's Lane Elementary School in 4th grade. And because we wanted to have a Valentine's Day dance. And yes, we did indeed have that Valentine's Day dance. So
doing the work.
I believe in the governance, power to the people.
Yeah, doing the work.
What's your origin story, Quay Weston?
What is our origin story? Again, Antigua is what I know. That's home. Grew up on a dirt road. It was paved in 2004.
Amen.
Just to let the record reflect, it is paved now. I grew up with my great grandmother. I chose to live with her. My mom was present, worked a lot, had me young. We have a different relationship. But I think in that, my upbringing was really I was very independent. Did a lot of creative things, which I do now. So some writing, some designing, some music, some poetry, some whatever you can think of, whatever I can think of, to be clear. Yeah, and I have moved through different organizations and groups. I was in the NAACP in college and Black student unions and all that stuff. So I've always been engaged and just curious about how we actually impact our lives, not just talk about it or show up and listen to people talk or tell us what to do, but how we actively engage in that change.
Yeah. And I see that in the work that you've done and the ways that you show up in these big O organizations and also small O organizations. You want to tell the people why we're doing this?
Yeah. So I said yes to this Down Ballot Banter. And it was largely because we both were curious about how do we have people relevant conversations, human conversations about all these political moments, not just the one we're in, right, with this current election, but even beyond that.
Right.
How can we show up to these conversations honestly, with curiosity, to like say the things we don't know or don't understand and ask about them and learn about them. And then hopefully share that with others as we're finding that along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you? What's your why here?
I think I wanted to be more humble about the things I didn't know. And I think I was tired of just like feeling isolated in my unknowing. And feeling like, actually, what does it mean to step forward and say, like, I feel like a pretty well-educated person. I have access to a lot of information. I know some of the city council members by name, could, you know, see them in the street. But like, I still don't actually understand how this works. And I'm like, if I don't, I know that there's so many other people like me who don't. And how can we step forward inside of like, I don't know, but let's go learn together, like you're saying. And, you know, I feel like I am really interested in having these conversations because I want to learn. Like, we can't change it if we don't understand how it's working now.
That's right.
So, and there are things that I want to change, you know? And so that was a big reason. And I just really feel like sometimes the way that the systems are set up, they want us to feel like we're never going to get it. So we can never do anything about it. And it's like, actually, there is a direct correlation between so many things that happen in our everyday life and decisions that people are making supposedly on our behalf, but don't know nothing about us.
That's right.
So I really want to make sure that like us, that like folks like us, you know, like feel empowered. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For saying that. Because I have felt disempowered before.
Right. And and when you feel disempowered, then it's like, well, you just like, we can throw up our hands.
Yeah.
And I actually feel like we're in a moment. We've always been in a moment, but I feel like we're in a moment. People need to put their hands deep in it and get their hands dirty and make mistakes and be like, ooh, that is a struggle. I'm grieving this thing, or you know, so that we can do something. And I feel like, particularly as someone who lives in the U.S., who's a U.S. citizen, who has the right to vote, it feels like I have a lot of responsibility to be responsible. Like, I have to have a lot of responsibility to be mindful and informed and like make, like you said, a human decision. Yeah.
One thing on that piece you mentioned around being humble and what you don't know is like, for me, I feel or have felt, you know, we live in a society in which mistakes aren't really welcomed or grace isn't really extended when you mess up or say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. And I think that's been my relationship to political spaces or like the political ecosystem, what have you. I don't feel able to come with questions. Like, I need to be coming with answers and solutions and like, this is what we need to be doing. And sometimes I think that means that we, speak for myself, I can make a decision that isn't informed by the right things. So I'm, even in groups, making decisions based on like big gaps. And there's many things that could be done, it feels, in more impactful ways and more efficient ways if we were to know a little bit more. And not to say that you have to know everything. Right. That's also not what we're doing here. But there is like some basic things that'll be extremely helpful for whatever movement or actions that we're taking. So I thank you for saying that.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the focus on local and state politics, especially because it's such a small margin of people who are actually making decisions about who's elected or like, you know, or who's showing up in these meetings week to week. And because it's small, that means actually it doesn't take as much to impact it. And I think the reminder that actually it doesn't actually take that much when we talk about a local or state, and that we could do it. Yeah.
That's good.
Is there something in your life that you have experienced or experiencing currently that you're like, oh, I see the direct connection between why this happened the way it's happened, and political decisions that maybe are not serving? Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing that's very present in my life related to my family working to preserve land in Pantiga, is the way that it works here in North Carolina, which is different from other states because every state has their own kind of laws around this. But when a person dies, if they die without a will designating who will take over their things, then in North Carolina, the way it works is that property, that money, whatever, is just dispersed amongst your heirs. So what that has meant for my family is my grandparents, third great grandparents, Noelle and Annie, bought this land back in the 50s. And because they didn't have a will, now that land is owned by 37 people, which is actually a low number.
In comparison to what it could be.
In comparison to what it is on average, which I heard is typically like 200 and some. So what that means for us is, as I've been doing this like archival work and oral history work with my family, realizing the land ownership question isn't really just about what we want to do with it, but there's like these legal things around it. There's getting surveys properly again. There's trying to clear the title to it, which is to just say we need to establish who actually owns it of those 37 people. And in North Carolina, I learned recently that there is a law called the Uniform Partition of Heirs Property Act that could be passed that would protect people who own heirs property. And when we establish like who the heirs are, we could actually apply for loans and get grant funding from the USDA or wherever without having to do the formal like entity that owns the land. So there's like a piece for many Black landowners where typically what happens is someone outside, usually white historically, tells one person, hey, I want to buy it off from y'all. And that person can say, sure, you can have my interest to the land. And that person typically goes to the courthouse and says, hey, they don't know what they want to do with the land. I just want to buy all of it. And typically the family isn't aware of it, don't get notices about the auction happening at the courthouse, like don't get like first right to buy it back. And that legislation could protect us from that if that were the case. Thankfully, it hasn't been. But we are like vulnerable to it if someone decided they wanted to do that. So that's like one very present thing that we're working through. And also like I've reached out to these Republican representatives who are like, I mean, it's in a committee and it probably will just stay there. So like I ain't moving towards nothing because it's not that important. Yeah, that's one very present thing. What about you? What have you experienced that you realized was connected to that political decisions?
I'm thinking a lot about the Social Security Act. And even though that was like federal legislation, the fact that when they wrote it, it purposely excluded domestics and sharecroppers. And at the time, my grandmother was a domestic and my grandfather was a sharecropper. Or as I like to say, a farmer exploited under sharecropping.
That's right.
And I, like, you know, so my grandmother, Zelma Carmen, she just passed in April. And, you know, my aunts and my uncles, my mama and them, like they did such a beautiful job of caring for her. They reached into their own pockets. They paid for her health aid. Like they did all the things that they were supposed to do to take care of their mama. And other folks stepped in too, right? You know, she, over the last like year and a half, 2 years, she was never alone. Like she always had somebody there with her. Deeply loved. And if that legislation wasn't written to exclude Black folks in that way, then the resources that, you know, my aunts, my uncles, my mama, like put into taking care of her, like, again, this like thing around which way the money is moving generationally. And I know that they did it willingly and they didn't get what they were owed, you know, from working from this nation. And so that's a big thing that I think about. And the other thing that I think a lot about, which doesn't impact me directly, but I want to go on a mini rant. So just come with me on this journey. Please. That is one of the reasons why I also wanted to start this podcast and also do the Down Ballot Brunch project is the 3/5 compromise. So when I learned about the 3/5 compromise in school, I was like, the way it was taught is like, isn't it so sad that they thought you were 3/5 of a person? And I'm like, that is sad. I'm a whole person. I'm 5/5, you know? But But then I learned, I was like, oh no, the southern states wanted each of these people to be counted as a whole person, but that they would not be able to vote on their behalf. So like these white folks would have then been buoyed by the bodies that they were enslaved and have more power. And the people in North are like, that's not fair. Them folks can't even vote. And they're like, all right, well, give us 3/5. For every 5 person, give us 3. And they're like, okay, fine. And when I think about that, I'm like, okay, so when I vote now in 2024, I'm also voting on behalf of every person who's been disenfranchised because of they've been incarcerated. I'm voting on behalf of Puerto Rico. I'm voting on behalf of Guam. And I'm voting on behalf of all the U.S. Virgin Islands. I'm voting on behalf of children. I'm voting on behalf of undocumented folks. Like, there are so many. And then, there's that article, people like everyone in the world should be able to vote in the U.S. election because it impacts them so much. But like my vote is not just my one vote. Like it is weighted. And I feel like that is really, it matters to me in ways that I didn't think about before. The responsibility of that my vote is not just a 1-for-1 vote. Yeah.
Can I add something?
Please do.
That I just found recently. Okay. Doing some research about Pitt County, Greenville, North Carolina.
You know my people.
We got some roots down there. My mom lives there now. There was a rule. I can't think of what year it was, but it's online, and I was reading about the establishment of Greenville. And the poll tax that we are very familiar with for Black people, there was a time in the life of Greenville where Black people poll taxes were used to cover the cost of people who ran away from plantations and were killed, and their owners were paid out of that tax.
So let me get this straight. I go as a free person. I try to go vote.
Yes.
They're like, give us $20.
Yes.
And I'm like, okay, I do. Okay, fine. The $20 I give, you're going to give it to a white man.
Yes.
Who owned a Black person.
Yes.
And the Black person was seeking their freedom.
Yes.
Were killed in that pursuit.
Yes.
And now because you've done lost your property.
Yes.
Here's the $20.
Yes.
Wow.
There was a woman named Rose, look it up, who was killed for poisoning their mouth.
I mean, sometimes you got to get free by any means necessary.
But yes, I didn't know how poll taxes were used or what their uses could be. Yeah. But in Pitt County, that was a way that poll taxes were used to quell rebellion.
That's so wild. That's so wild. And also, my mama was the Black homecoming queen in 1980 something in Greenville. So this makes a lot of sense, honestly, for a lot of things. Quay, what do you want to be learning together on on this journey?
Yeah, I want to be learning what are the fundamentals of the electoral process. How do we hold people accountable in the case that they move out of alignment with the people they represent? I want to be learning who are the decision makers that we don't think much about that have so much power on how day-to-day things work.
Like the city manager.
Like the city manager of Durham.
Right.
I had an idea, but I didn't know that there were all these different council structures, right? Like New York versus North Carolina, where the mayor can is the executor and the council just does legislation and the mayor can say veto that. I'm like, I wasn't familiar with that.
Right. But North Carolina, the mayor is just a figurehead. You just own the city council.
Another vote. Yeah. Just a face. So yeah, I'm curious about those things. And I'm also curious about how we can get clearer about when and how we choose to partner with or not partner with institutions to get the things that we need tangibly. Yeah. I'm curious about learning some of that too.
Yeah. Yeah, when you know the levers, you know which one you can pull.
That's right.
Yeah. And actually, where that loose screw is, that you can be like, well, if I just unscrew this
just a little bit,
down, you know? Yeah, that's important.
What about you? What do you want to be learning?
I think I want to know more about like the gaps that everyday folks have. Folks like me, like where are our knowledge gaps, and what do we want to be learning? And also, I think I want to find some loopholes. Like I want to find where some of the weak spots are. That like, oh, actually, if you apply pressure there, then some things can happen that we didn't even know. That's a dream. And I think I also really want, in a longer term way, I want to learn more about alternative ways of governance. Because I think so often, and I feel this in a lot of ways, not just politically, but like we're in a crisis of imagination.
Yes.
That like, well, this is always the way we've done it. This is always the way we're going to do it. And it's like, actually, this country is very young. This is like, we're actually, this land is very old. The nations, the indigenous nations that have been here for thousands upon thousands of years, and our relationship to the land are like old, and we need to be listening to them because they know how to be with this land. And the U.S. and North Carolina as a structure on top of the land is a baby.
Yeah.
A powerful baby with nukes.
Yes.
Which is very frightening.
Well, you put it that way.
It's a baby.
Yeah.
And so
it's true.
Right. So like because of that, a lot of these things that we think are like, well, that's gonna be forever, it's actually not that long. So I think I wanna continue to be in a posture of imagination. And I wanna be in that with other people who are also dreaming. And I want to learn about what other places in the world are doing and have done, because I know that there are other ways and better ways to do this. I trust that. Yeah.
Are there people you look to for this sort of guidance in this moment that are kind of like anchoring your place in this podcast?
Yeah. I'm thinking a lot about older Black women. I brought my photo of Ann Atwater, Durham legend. May she rest in peace. And I'm thinking about my grandmothers, honestly, who would not call themselves political leaders by any stretch of imagination, but were at the center of families, centers of institutions, and center of communities. And like when you are in that, you actually have to learn how to be in governance with humans that are flawed and imperfect and complex. And I actually feel like I want to remember that we can actually make human scale politics. We can have human scale governance. So I think I'm thinking a lot about folks who never had an official title, but held so much power.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's one of the people that was in my head is Miss Annie. Annie is both one of the choir members at Antioch Church of Christ Disciples of Christ.
Come on.
In Pantigga. But she was also like the head after service food lady.
Come on. That's
so
power.
she would be in there singing.
And then
she'll
go
like
downstairs.
jump out and then you see her in there and she got a little thing on with a little hat. And I was like, she running the church.
Now here's a pro tip. Whoever is the lead in like serving the food, they do have the most power.
Yes. And feed everybody.
Come on. Because also the mathematics to be like, I have this pot and this pan of chicken and I done looked at how many people's in this church house and I know that person's going to want seconds. And I also know that family over here, they're going through a hard time. So I'm going to put some extra food on their plate so they can take it home for dinner or have there is so many social, there is a social technology that like is just unmatched. And no one has to give you a title to do that.
Don't need it.
You're like, oh, I just know. I know how to be with humans.
And this is what we do. And this is what I do. And it felt like she was very clear about her contribution here. All of them. I think of my great-grandma a lot, who wasn't very vocal about politics, but was very like aware of what was going on, particularly locally in Pantigga. Like she knew everything.
Yes.
Because people called her and they trusted her. They called her sister, but they like trust her. They came to the house, the insurance man, the funeral home people, like everybody visited her. So I think she heard everything from everybody. And her prayers at night was like 45 minutes.
In her prayer closet
I would
for
think
everybody.
she was down there asleep. Like she'd be in there like praying. And I'm like, whoa, she got a lot of people to pray for.
There's a lot of things to pray about.
Yeah. So I'm like, even in my place, like how do I find my lane, right? And like how do I show up well for people and so that people trust me, but also we can be in the work of trying to shift things without having to be running for something specifically, right? But like, what are those like circular kind of levels of impact or influence to have?
Yeah. And the both end. How can we push some of these? Not
that
push.
Too.
How can we lovingly invite, support, and empower?
A loving nudge.
Yeah, to be like, hey, like what would you need to also step forward? Because you have all the skills, all the talents, all the relationships. Because sometimes the folks that step forward, I'm like, why?
Why? Why you? Somebody told you. Maybe nobody told you.
Right.
Maybe you just thought it was a good idea. Maybe you just thought it was a good idea. You just like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it. Yeah. I want something else.
Yeah. Yeah. Quay, what are you dreaming for North Carolina?
I'm dreaming for new land relationships, more indigenous, native folks, Indian folks here, reclaiming their things.
Yeah.
And let's like being actively a part of moving those things back to the hands in which they belong. I think about or dream of a North Carolina that's like accessible trains. I want to be able to ride the train to Asheville.
Me too.
I just want to go on the train to Asheville. And I think that shouldn't be ridiculous to ask for. Yeah, I'm thinking about a North Carolina that takes care of our elders, that like artists can have health care and have benefits or like know they could possibly retire one day off of their career, right? And like seeing artists as workers actually, which we are. And then a safe communal, well communities that can create a safe environment for children. And make sure people ain't got to pay more than their mortgage for childcare.
Yeah, because you know a little something about that.
I know a little something about that for sure.
Yeah, that's wild.
That's what I got right now. What about you?
I just want to ditto everything you said. I'm also dreaming of a North Carolina that is a cradle to grave cultural site. That like there are opportunities for us to participate in creative endeavors from the time that we like join the world to the time we leave it. I'm also really dreaming about really intentional relationships that hold the fullness of history between Black folks and Indigenous Native folks, and not to the exclusion of our Latina neighbors, our Middle Eastern and Muslim neighbors, our Asian neighbors. Like as a locust of some of that work, to specifically think about like how are we going to be in relationship with each other because we here now. What do we do? I am dreaming of a North Carolina where teachers are some of the most paid people in the state.
Yeah.
Because my mama is a high school theater teacher, and I know she really loves her job. And I also hate that like last year she was at the 5 and Below trying to buy a little rug to put in her her safety closet and, you know, a bucket with some coffee grounds in case they're in there and someone has to use the bathroom. Like that's dystopic, actually. And I hate it.
Yeah.
And I'm dreaming of a North Carolina where folks have dignity, where like everyone is afforded dignity, like dignity to have a home, dignity to do work that matters, and to be like compensated equitably for that work. And that is not just we're fighting and struggling for things that like feel so basic it's angering, but like our conversation about like, ooh, what if? Like this is how we could have a thriving North Carolina,
That's
you
right.
know? So those are some of the things that I'm dreaming. Yeah. We're going to have lots of conversations, Quay.
Many conversations.
Many conversations. And I feel like so excited to be on this with you. But before we roll out, we have some very important questions.
Okay.
Cheerwine or Pepsi Cola?
Pepsi. Do I get to ask you?
Yeah.
Cheerwine or Pepsi Cola? You go.
I'm a Coca-Cola over Pepsi Cola.
Okay.
Girl.
Okay.
But if I have to choose, I'm going to say Cheerwine over Pepsi Cola.
I won't go into that here.
Okay.
Next, Bojangles or Cookout?
Cookout has more options. Period. I want to have the flexibility.
I want us to be on the same page here.
I know you do.
But it keeps not happening. I am a Bojangles person. It's the Supremes for me.
I hear that. And I respect your love. But are you a honey mustard or a barbecue?
Honey mustard.
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
I love a barbecue. I like both. I want to have, again, y'all, this is...
I get both when you go.
Okay.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I get both.
Okay.
I get both.
Okay.
Sweet or unsweet?
Sweet.
Now.
New York.
No, okay.
Is that your excuse?
No, that's not my excuse. Mine is sometimes the sweet is too sweet. And we just got to be honest about it. Sometimes you got to cut it.
I think that's what I mean. Sweet as in like too sweet. It feels like the natural go-to.
I want half and half. Okay. I want a half I want a half unsweet.
We are getting older. We can't just be out here.
Look now, if I have a sweet tea after 4 p.m., I'm not going to sleep. What we about? I'm going to be looking at the ceiling.
That's right.
Come on now.
Okay.
Okay. Carolina or Duke?
I'm actually a Carolina fan.
Oh my God.
Yeah. No?
Oh.
What's your answer?
Neither.
Okay.
Okay, I am a proud graduate of North Carolina Agricultural Technical State University, Aggie Pride.
Aggie Pride.
And I know that in the NCAA we're not moving and shaking.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
So if I had to choose a team that might actually make it to March Madness, I'm gonna go Central because HBCU love,
Central?
Yeah, it's like the cousin that you like. I can mess with you, but can't nobody else say nothing about you.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Respect.
Huh. Wow.
But Aggie Pride.
I went to UNCG. That was down the street. But I wish I would have gone there.
You should.
My dad talked me out of it. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Don't talk your kids out of going to HBCUs. That's a whole other conversation. North Carolina has 11 of them. This is a plug for HBCUs at this point. Quay, thank you so much for being here and also being my friend and being down when I ask you to do all things sometimes.
That's right. Here we are doing the things. I love you.
I love you too, friend. Okay. Thanks for tuning in to Down Ballot Banter. We hope y'all enjoy diving into the tentacular world of local politics with us.
Yeah, and don't forget, this podcast is an extension of Monet's beautiful dream, the Down Ballot Brunch, where there are 3 simple steps. It's to eat, have a conversation, and to act.
That's right. Have a conversation using this podcast episode, the Down Ballot Brunch chat guide, or your own prompts. Write a note to an elected official on a Down Ballot Brunch postcard. Share quotes from your convo on social media, with consent, of course. Or text 3 friends about their voting plans and find out what matters to them.
And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to like, share, subscribe. If you're listening on other platforms, be sure to rate and review. Share it with your people.
Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep up with the Down Ballot Banter.